Hello, I'm Attorney Todd Leneve. Welcome to West Virginia Gun Law. Today I want to talk to you about the ATF and its interesting twist on the now defunct pistol brace rule. There's a little bonus here as well. I'm going to share some footage that shows you no matter how much you think you understand it, you have no idea how much the DC bureaucrats hate us. Stick around. In early 2023, the ATF and Department of Justice imposed a final rule regarding the use of a brace on a pistol-length firearm. And we've had a lot of discussion about that on this channel. There's been a ton of that through all social media. I'm not going to go through the history of that here today because I'm sure all of you are pretty well familiar. But that rule went into effect in early spring of 2023. Essentially saying that if you put a brace onto a pistol-length firearm, that turned it into an SBR, a short-barreled rifle, meaning that it had to have a tax stamp because it's now a regulated firearm. Well, that rule from before it even went into effect was being challenged. After it went into effect, lawsuits were filed, and there were a lot of legal proceedings, particularly in Texas, filing challenges against the validity of the rule, the constitutionality, the way that the rule was procedurally imposed, and those challenges went up to the appeals courts, back to the trial courts multiple times. Ultimately, it was determined that the rule was improper, not because it violated the Second Amendment, because that wasn't the basis of the challenge, but rather that it violated the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA. And the APA sets out a very clear path for how bureaucratic agencies, administrative agencies, can impose rules that they use to enforce various federal statutes. And if that process under the APA is not followed correctly, then the rule is subject to challenge. Well, that's what happened here. The ATF introduced a proposed final rule, opened it up for public comment period for a length of time, and after they got their feedback, realized that there was a lot of question about how that rule could be enforced, and so they changed the text of the rule. But instead of having a new comment period, they simply rolled forward, imposed that, made it the final rule, and that was now their way of enforcing the federal law on short-barreled rifles. Well, the trouble is, by changing the text of the rule, which really, in the way they did it, completely changed the rule itself, they had violated the Administrative Procedures Act because that new rule was never given the same opportunity in terms of a public comment period for people to respond, for people to file objections, opposition, for there to be a hearing even on the new language in the rule as opposed to the original language. So ultimately, because the ATF failed to follow the Administrative Procedures Act, that rule was stricken. And last June of 2024, the federal trial court in Texas that had this case essentially entered what's called a vacater, which is a legal term that says that a rule or a decision or some other action is being vacated by the court. In other words, it's being stricken and it no longer has any effect. So the final rule on pistol braces was vacated back in June of 2024. Well, in December of 2024, a private citizen who also happened to be a member of Gun Owners of America purchased a CZ Scorpion and decided that he wanted to put a brace on that pistol, thinking that it was okay because the rule had been stricken. However, because he wasn't convinced from what he was reading online that he fully understood the rule, he decided to write to the ATF and ask their position on the issue. Pro tip here, generally don't go to the ATF. Go to a qualified firearms attorney who can help you understand what the current state of the law is, because the fact is the government is not here to help you, and most of us know that. So this guy writes to the ATF. The ATF, through its Firearms Industry Program branch, responds in an email on December 12th of 2024. No account name, an individual name, no signature, no indication who that email was from. Simply it was generically a response from the Firearms Industry Program branch. And in that email, this individual was told that the ATF is of the opinion that any pistol-length firearm with either a brace or a stock is an SBR, that the ATF will enforce the federal statute regarding possession of an SBR, and that the individual would have to pay a $200 tax stamp and be approved to be able to possess an SBR. Essentially, he was told that because the federal statute is the responsibility of the ATF to enforce, the ATF was free to enforce that statute however it chose to do so. Well, the problem is the federal court already said, ATF, your method of enforcing the federal statute is improper. So in response, Gun Owners of America sent a strongly worded letter to the ATF asking for clarification, demanding a response, and basically wanting to know, hey, are you going to go against the courts and try to enforce this law with your rule that has been declared improper and has been stricken from having any effect on the gun-owning public? So far as of today, I am not aware of any response from the ATF to that GOA letter. But as soon as we hear anything, certainly we'll share that information because it's an interesting issue. The takeaway from all this is that it is presently legal to manufacture pistol braces, to sell pistol braces, to purchase pistol braces, to put them on firearms and treat them as pistols. You can even buy braced firearms from an FFL. It's legal. The problem is the ATF has already demonstrated in this email that it is willing to go rogue and say, we don't really care what the courts say, we're going to do what we want to do anyhow. So my caution to you is that if you do currently lawfully own and use a braced pistol, it's not an SBR, but there's nothing to prevent some rogue, over-motivated agent from trying to enforce the rule and say that you are in fact possessing an SBR or using it in a manner that makes it an SBR. So be warned, this is going on, but the issue is being addressed. And again, we'll let you know as soon as we hear anything about that. Now for this little bit of bonus footage on why you don't realize how much the government actually hates you. Steve Dettelbach, who has been the director of the ATF for several years, recently resigned. Now, it's very common when you have a change in political party or the new president coming into office for that president to appoint people that he wants in position to head the various agencies under the administrative branch of government, the executive branch of government, sorry. And so because Dettelbach knew that he was on his way out, he chose to resign and somewhat more dictate the manner of his leaving as opposed to being terminated by President Trump when he comes into office next week. So, as part of his departure, there was a little bit of an affair for him at the ATF, and in that affair, he was given a gift, a parting gift, if you will, by another senior member of the ATF staff. This lady presents to him, as you'll see in a video I'm going to share with you here in a second, an 80% lower as almost a gag gift. And as he accepts it, they chuckle. She says it doesn't have to be registered and it certainly can't be traced. And then everybody in the room just laughs and laughs and laughs. Let's take a look at that video here real quickly.
So this does not need to be traced.
Okay.
Nor registered.
That's great.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What?
The attitudes of everybody in that room reflect so clearly that they hate us. The 80% lower and frame rule was a huge piece of ATF's rulemaking process in the last few years. Their whole goal was to make all of us felons for having 80% lowers or frames that were not serialized. They wanted to put us in jail. They wanted to fine us tens of thousands of dollars. They wanted to take away our gun rights for the rest of our lives because we would be felons. And this type of behavior, this sort of joke, oh, isn't it all just so funny and cute, is how they view us, how they view the issue. They're making light of it when they have been trying with everything that they have, with every resource they have, to make us felons for possessing one. And now Steve Dettelbach has one. Isn't that just a grand idea as to how the government feels about us? I hope you better understand how much the DC bureaucracy hates us. Listen, would love to hear any comments you have on these two topics. Certainly please drop them in the comments section below. Like, subscribe, share the video if you would. I would love to have you do so. Appreciate that help. In the meantime, I appreciate you spending this few minutes with me today. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. And until then, take care and stay safe.